Hey book baddies, I hope you're having a great day, week, weekend, whenever you're getting around to watching this. If you've seen one of my videos in the past, welcome back. If you're new, welcome. My name is Hides or Heidi, and this is my channel all around book related content. And today we are doing my January reading wrap up. And I'm going to just say it, January was a struggle. It was a struggle. I'm in the United States, if you don't know that, and the United States is kind of a hot mess right now. She's kind of a hot mess right now. And it's really been affecting the mental health as a whole. Trying to power through, trying to be positive, but it was a struggle. So I actually only wound up finishing 13 books, which is not a lot for me personally. And so, yeah. And these were the 13 books that I wound up reading. And I actually have 2 DNFs that we'll be talking about. If you don't know what DNF is, that means did not finish. Somewhat common term in the bookish community. So, as per usual, grab yourself your drink of choice. Tea, coffee, water, hot cocoa, alcoholic beverage, if that's what floats your boat. And sit back, get cozy, and enjoy, because we got some books to discuss. Let's see if this is actually cooled down enough to drink. She's still a little hot. She's still a little hot. I need to start making my tea sooner before I start these videos, but I digress. So, if you've not seen one of my videos before, typically speaking, I will do my DNF books first. I will then go into my audiobooks, then to my ebooks, and then to my physical books. If I look down, I'm looking at my notes because I have ADHD. And I need notes and structure to keep us moving along here. It's just what she is. Welcome. Welcome to the Hot Mess Shit Show. It's a great time. So, we are going to be discussing my 2 DNF books for January. The first one that I wound up DNFing was Cloud Cuckoo Land, and that is by Anthony Doerr. And I thought that this was going to be really interesting, and it wound up just not working for me personally. So this is a book that is, it's got sci-fi, it's sci-fi and fantasy, and you have multiple POVs. I think there's 4 POVs total that I got when I was reading it, and I think I got through about 100 pages. And you have, like, dual timelines. And I honestly was just confused. I wasn't sure where, like, the story was going. I wasn't sure how, like, the characters and the timelines were connecting together. And I understand I didn't finish the book, and that would have probably been explained later in the book. But it was just too much. Like, it was just too much going on. Then also at the same time, really boring while there was so much stuff going on. So it just didn't work for me. So that's why I wound up DNFing this one personally. Sorry, I know this is super popular. Just didn't work for me. My second DNF for January is a newer book, and that is A Dark and Drowning Tide. And this is by Allison Saft. I thought this was going to be really interesting. I thought it was going to be just unique. So this is a fantasy where the 2 characters that we're following are Lorelei and Sylvia, and they are both students that are trying to be folklorist. I think that's how that's pronounced. And in this, at the beginning of the book, you are introduced to the 2 characters, and both of them are considered, like, essentially almost like the best students / like prodigies almost. And one of the 2 are going to be selected for a, like, exhibition where they are going to be able to go and continue, like, the research that they are doing for their careers. And the exhibit, like, whichever one is chosen for the, like, exhibition or adventure or journey, whatever we're gonna call it, it would open a lot of doors for them for, like, their future and for their careers. So it's very important to be the selected student. And then it just kind of goes from there. This there's like a murder that winds up happening, and I got to the point where the murder happens, And it just, I don't think I like the writing style. I felt like, again, I probably got around 100-ish pages, 50 to 100 pages in, and I didn't like the pacing of the story. The writing style just didn't really work for me personally. So that's why I just wound up with being like, no, I'm good on this one personally. It's a no for me. So that was my second DNF for January. Let me take a little drinky drink. I wound up finishing 5 audiobooks in January. And the first one that I finished was The Tale of the Flower Bride. And that is by Roshani Chockshi. And in this book, this has a dual POV. So you get your dual POV as well as a dual timeline. And the story is revolving around the history of a character named Indigo. And the one POV is Indigo's husband, and he's referred to as the flower bride's groom. I don't remember how they refer to him. I don't remember if he's named in the book either. But so the one POV is Indigo's husband, and then the second POV is a childhood friend of Indigo named Azure. And as you're going through this, you're starting to learn more about the character Indigo, because this story is basically talking about Indigo, her history, just like the weird things about her, because you're kind of like, is she magical? Is she not magical? Like, is there a magical realm? Is there a not magical realm? And it's just, you're guessing as you're trying to go through this story, because Indigo basically is like, oh, well, like, we're special, and we're gonna be taken to this, like, you know, magical, like, fae world. I enjoyed the story. I thought it was really pretty writing. It was okay. Like, I wasn't, like, my mind wasn't blown by the story, but I did enjoy the story. I wound up rating it a 3.5. So if you like kind of like lyrical, gothic-y books with fantasy elements, this might be up your alley. It was good. I enjoyed it well enough. It was, again, not mind-blowing, but if that sounds like something up your alley, I'd say go for it. So the second audiobook that I wound up finishing was actually a reread, and that is The Final Empire, and that is part of the Mistborn saga? Are we calling it a saga? The Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. And I read the first, like, Era 1, like the Mistborn Era 1 years ago, but it's been a long time, and I couldn't remember all the details that I wanted to remember. So I wound up re-listening to the book, and I forgot how much I just absolutely love Brandon Sanderson's writing style. I love the characters. I love the world building. I just love, like, the dynamics between the characters, as well as all of the political intrigue in the story. In the story, you're following you have dual POVs, and one of the characters is Vin, and she is basically a thief for hire, essentially. And then you're also following Kelsier, and he is what they call a Mistborn, which I don't want to explain too much into that. And he's trying to get a group of people together to overthrow the corrupt government. So it's an absolutely phenomenal story. If you have not read Brandon Sanderson, the first, like, Mistborn Era 1 is, like, the way to start, in my opinion. And I just loved the book. It was a 5-star for me, just like it was the first time. Really just thoroughly enjoy Brandon Sanderson as a whole. So, highly recommend The Final Empire if you are interested in Brandon Sanderson. The third audiobook that I wound up finishing was Sociopath, a Memoir. And that's by Patric, Gagne, and, well, Dr. Patric Gagne. And this is a memoir of her life growing up. And she is I don't want to say she was diagnosed being a sociopath. And she kind of talks about this in the book because the term sociopath is not actually, I guess, considered a diagnosis, which I was not aware of. And this is her explaining how growing up as a sociopath was a challenge because, she kind of explains like how her mind works and how she views things. And it was a really interesting story, and you get to see her develop into adulthood and see her relationships with her family, see her relationships with other people, romantic relationships, and just kind of see like how her career was shaped by her experiences. I thought it was a good book. I wound up rating it a 3-star. I thought it was a little on the long side, in my opinion. And there is some debate about the author's education. I don't know much about that. I was just reading stuff in people's reviews that I guess, like, it's debated if she has the education that she has. Just reporting what I read in reviews. I don't know if that's true, not true. Did not really look into it much myself. And I will say, after finishing the book, I wonder if all of the events in the book are actually true. Because some of the things you're just like that was a wild choice. So it was a good book, a good enough book. It's a good reading experience, if you will. I rated it a 3-star, so I didn't hate it, but I finished the book questioning the legitimacy of the story, if that makes any bit of sense, which I don't know if I have a right to question somebody's memoir or not, but it is what it is. So that was Sociopath, a memoir. The 4th audiobook that I wound up finishing is Evil Eye, and that is by Etaf Rum? Etaf Rum? I tried to look that up and I was getting like mixed things on how to pronounce her name, so I'm sorry if I really botched that. This was a really, really good book. If you haven't read this, so you're following Yara, who is a Palestinian woman, and she lives in New York, and she is trying to process a lot of like mental health issues that she is going through. She talks about, like, in the book, like, like Yara explains like a lot of like the guilt that she has because of her family's religions and their culture and how she's supposed to act. She talks about like her like past and about basically how there's a lot of women in their culture that has it, from her experience, have, mental illnesses like depression that aren't being addressed. And it was just a really good reading experience. I liked the focus on like mental like health and how culturally you either are not validated if you have mental health issues, or you are like pushed aside if you have mental health issues, and you're not supposed to talk about it. Like, oh, we don't talk about like mental health issues, like that's not real, so on and so forth. And I think that a lot of people in general have that experience because mental health in general is not taken seriously like it should. But it was really interesting to see it from like a Palestine woman's perspective, because it's not something that I've personally ever read or had any kind of understanding of the culture, as well as the any religion that ties into the culture. So it was just a really great read. It did take me a little, like, it took a minute to, like, get into the story, but I did wind up rating that a 4.5, so I do highly recommend that. It was a really good reading experience, and I really liked the story, and I liked the focus on, like, mental health in general, so highly recommend that one. Very, very good story, very good book, just good stuff. The last book that I wound up listening to was Libby, Lost and Found, and that is by Stephanie Booth. This book has a dual POV, and you're following Libby, who is an author that has she's basically an author that's kind of cut off from society, and she writes under a pen name. And she's the author of this book series called The Fallen Children, and it's a children's book series that is, like, wildly popular. Like, adults are even reading it. And at the beginning of the book, Libby is diagnosed with basically, like, early onset Alzheimer's. I think it was Alzheimer's. And she's young. Like, I think she's only, I want to say 40s or 50s. So pretty young for Alzheimer's. And so now she's, struggling with this. She's by herself. She really doesn't have a lot of friends, family, anybody to be like a support system for her through all of this. And she's also getting a lot of pressure from her publisher to finish the Fallen Children book series. And I really enjoyed her point of view when we got it. And then we get a second point of view, and that is Peanut, who is I think she's 10 to 12 year old range. And I found Peanut intolerable. I could not stand every time we got one of her points of view. So she's like a child that's a massive fan of the Fallen Children series. And she thinks that the series can basically answer a lot of, like, questions about, like, where, like, her family and where she came from and all of this stuff. And I do not think that this book was successful at what it was attempting to do. And so, like, you're getting these parallels between reality as well as the Fallen Children series. And, like, there's parallels, like, between the two. And I think that the author was really trying to, like, draw parallels between, like, the book series as well as, like, the reality of, like, what these characters are experiencing. And it just, to me, really fell short. I don't think that it was done well. And I think that the author was trying to do too much in the book. And I think it just fell short because there was just there's too many things going on. There's too many parallels. It just kind of was very messy. It was a very messy book. Interesting concept, but the writing itself just really fell flat on conveying the concept. So I wound up rating Libby, Lost and Found 2.5 stars. So didn't work for me. I just did not enjoy it, and I don't think that it worked for what the author was attempting to go for. So, sorry, 2.5. It's a no for me. Let me get a little drinky drink. Moving on to the ebooks that I wound up reading in January. The first one is Love You, Alika, and that is by Amanda Elliot. In this story, we are following Abby as well as Seth. Abby is a cafe owner, and Seth works in tech of some kind. They both live in a very small town in Vermont, and the town has decided that they want to put on a Jewish festival because the tourism in their town has gone down, so they're trying to bring in tourism. So the thought process is to do a Jewish festival because everybody else around them does a Christmas festival. So they wanted to do something different to, get a corner of the market, essentially. And Abby is Jewish, and the town council basically says, hey, Abby, you're a Jewish person. we want you to put on this festival because you're a Jewish person, is essentially how that conversation went. So she is, she winds up agreeing to help create this Jewish festival. And she's really struggling because she is estranged from her family that is back in New York. And she starts talking to Seth, and Seth is a customer that comes to her cafe. She is annoyed with Seth. She's just not having anything to do with Seth. But she winds up finding out that Seth is also Jewish, and they get into a fake dating relationship because Seth was like, I will help you create this Jewish festival if you come home with me for the holidays and basically pretend that we're dating so that my mom leaves me alone about dating people. And so they both go and do the whole fake dating situation in New York. My favorite part, I would say, about this book is learning more about, like, Hanukkah and, just a little bit more about, like, the Jewish community. That's about the only thing I actually liked about this book. I wound up giving this book a 2-star. I felt that Abby was annoying. I just thought her character, she was irritating every time, like, she's always had, like, irritating things that she thought and said. I felt like Seth had absolutely no personality. Like, I just felt like there was zero personality, and the two of them didn't have, like, chemistry. I just felt like there was nothing like that, because they wind up, getting into a real relationship at the end. But I felt like they had no chemistry to get them into, like, the real relationship by the end of the book. And I just felt that they have, like, there's, like, major plot points that are happening in the book, and I felt like none of them necessarily had a resolution by the end of the book. So the book did not work for me. I just felt like there was a lot of writing of just random scenes of them, like, running around New York, but not actually, like, continuing, like, the plot in any capacity. So just didn't like it. It didn't work for me. I wanted to like it, but it just really fell short writing style wise and, like, getting through the story itself. So sorry, 2-star. The second ebook that I actually wound up finishing, I'm not going to talk about because it's an ARC read and I did not get explicit permission to talk about it on the YouTube channel, but it's called Shades of Power. That is by Jenny Grims, and I'll just put a picture up here just to say, hey, this is an ARC that's coming out. If you want to, check her out, she exists. Other than that, I don't really want to discuss it because, again, I always try to ask, like, authors' permissions before I talk about ARC specifically on the channel. So I'm just saying, hey, she exists. So that's all you get with that one. The third ebook that I wound up finishing is actually Ice Planet Barbarian, which I know is wildly popular and is a wild story. That is by Ruby Dixon, and I will just tell you, I had no idea how I wanted to rate this book, because I felt like, one, don't go into this book taking it seriously, and, like, Ruby Dixon is not trying to be serious with this book. You're just going in for a good time. It's just, you're just there for the vibes. You're there for a good time. And I think that the book succeeded in that. I wound up giving this a 3.5 star because, again, I wasn't sure where to put this because I thought that the book did what it was supposed to do. So this is a spicy book. So if you're not into spice, don't read this one. But you're following Georgie, who is abducted by aliens. And the alien, like, they wind up crashing onto a planet in outer space somewhere. And she has to go see about finding some sort of, like, civilization or food, because they're now crashed on this, right? Like, this group of, like, women are now crashed on this, like, random planet. And they come in contact with an alien life form that lives on the planet. And I'm it's a spicy book. I'll let you figure that out from there. It was a good time. It was wild. It just was ridiculous. And if you want to read, you can read it if you want, but I have been told that the audiobook is the way to go. Georgie is Southern. She's from Florida, so technically Southern, but I guess the audiobook narrator has a very, very heavy Southern accent, which I find weird because she's supposed to be from Florida. Florida, like, doesn't have necessarily, like, super crazy Southern accents, but I heard it's a good time. I heard the audiobook's the way to go, so if you've ever been interested, I've heard the audiobook is the way to do it, and it was, I mean, for what it was a good time. Just, you're there for the vibes, you're there for a laugh. That's all I gotta say about Ice Planet Barbarian. And I think there's 21 books in the series, which I'm trying to figure out how like, the author managed to make 21 books out of this concept. But, I don't know. I'll probably read the next one. Just because, again, it was a good time. So, that's Ice Planet Barbarian. The fourth ebook and last ebook that I wound up finishing was Black Cake, and that is by Charmaine Wilkerson. So this was a book for my book club, and this is a book that has multiple POVs, and it also has a dual timeline. And in this book, you're following the story of Eleanor, and her growing up, and, you know, all of the things that she experienced from, like, basically, like, teenage years to adulthood. And you're also you're getting her point of view in this, and you're also getting her two children, Brian and Benny, their points of view. And basically Eleanor is explaining all of these things to them that she never told her children through letters. I enjoyed the book. I thought it was a good time. I liked how the story unfolded as you're reading it. I will say it was a little confusing at the start because it was kind of like info dump. Like, it was like a lot of characters all at once, and it was just a lot of information all at once. But I like how you get these bits and pieces and how, like, this story unfolds as you're reading it. So I enjoyed it. I wound up rating this a 3.5. I think this could have been a little higher if it wasn't for the fact that the book kind of felt a little slow, and I personally felt it was a little long, my opinion, but I did like it. I know that it's also a TV show. I might wind up actually watching the TV show adaptation because I heard that it's really good. I'm not huge into, like, movie and TV show adaptations of books, but this one in particular I heard is actually very good, and they did a really good job keeping, like, the core of the story and translating it into a TV show nicely. So, FYI, if you're interested. So that was Black Cake, and I wound up rating that a 3.5. And that was my last ebook. Give me a second to take a little drinky drink. Actually, I want some water too. I feel like it's cold, like it's very cold here, so the air is very dry. So I'm like, okay, so we will get into the physical books that I wound up finishing last month, which January. The first one that I finished was a Fate Inked in Blood, and that was by Danielle L. Jensen, and I enjoyed this. I really like Danielle L. Jensen's writing in general. She also did the Bridge Kingdom, which I finished 3 of the books in that series so far, and really, really liked that, like her writing style. I like the worlds that she builds, and this was good. So this is based off of Norse mythology. You are following Feyre as well as Bjorn, and this is a romantasy, so you go in meeting Feyre, and then Bjorn comes in later, and this is how they meet and how their relationship kind of unfolds. And in this story, Feyre is, I don't want to give spoilers. Okay, so it's in the synopsis. She has a drop of goddess blood, and so she is like basically like a one of a kind like person, because she is the only one that has this particular drop of a goddess's blood. There's other characters that have god's blood, goddess's blood, but hers, because she's the shield maiden, and she's the only one that is a shield she's the only one that has the shield maiden's drop of blood in her system. And so she is actually part of a prophecy that basically she's going to be how a leader becomes like the king in this, like where she lives. So I really enjoyed this. I liked like the politics. I enjoyed the romance between like the characters. I thought this was like a really good first book to like do like the world building. So I rated this a 4-star. I can't wait for the second book. I believe this is only supposed to be a duology, and the second one is coming out in June, I want to say. So I am looking forward to that. I can't wait to see where they can, like where the story continues and how it finishes off. So it was a good time. I recommend. This was a 4-star for me. So thumbs up for Fate Inked in Blood. The next physical book that I wound up finishing was also based off of mythology, but that's Finnish mythology, excuse me. And that is North is the Night, and that is by Emily Rath. This was a good time. I really liked this. In this book, you get dual points of view in this one, in this book, and one point of view is Ciri, and then the other point of view is Ina. So in this world, they have gods and goddesses, and the goddesses, different goddesses of like death, are stealing women from the different like towns in like where they live, or the villages where they live. And in this, Ina winds up being taken by one of the goddesses of death. She's not the goddess of death. She's a goddess of pain or misery or something. I don't remember which goddess she is right off the top of my head, but she's taken to essentially like their version of the underworld. And Ciri goes on an adventure to try to rescue Ina from the goddesses of death and from the underworld. This was a good time. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed learning a little bit more about Finnish mythology. I will tell you, the names are a challenge in this. I was looking up how to pronounce the names so many times, and frankly, I don't even know if I was still pronouncing them correctly. But I kept looking, and I kept trying. And there's some long names in this one, so I will warn you, the names are intimidating, but you'll get through it. I thought this was a good time. I rated this a 4-star. I cannot wait for the next one, which I believe this is also going to be a duology. So can't wait to see how the next book finishes up this story, because I like how the book wrapped up in the end personally. I know some people had some complaints about the end of the book. I liked it personally. I thought it was a good time. I can't wait for book 2. So this was a good time. Really liked it. So North is the Night it's a thumbs up for me. Can't wait for book 2. The third physical book that I wound up finishing was one that many people probably finished, and that is Onyx Storm. This was a great time. I know there are some people that didn't like this. Sorry, your opinion is wrong. This was a great time. I had a great time. This was a 5-star, no notes, great continuation of the story. I loved the characters. Riddick, I've been a Riddick stan from like book 1. He's fantastic. I love that we got to see more of his character, because he's just chef's kiss, perfect, 10 out of 10. Love him so much. I love seeing Violet's growth in this book. because I felt like book 2, she was a bit whiny. Girl was given a little whiny in book 2. So this was great because I felt like we got to see her grow more into her character. We got to see a little bit of growth with her, which I really liked. I liked where like the story was going. I will say the ending wasn't a surprise for me because the ending is how I anticipated it to end. Not exactly like how the events played out, but like the big picture of the ending was kind of where I was seeing the ending of this book. So I will say like that was kind of what I was expecting, and I'm kind of glad that's the direction that the book is going in, because we have 2 more books. So I'm really curious to see like how the next 2 books roll out. I have my own personal theories about that, but I'm not going to give any spoilers. But this was a good time. I really liked it. There was one part in the book where I was crying because it hurt my feelings a lot. It hurt my feelings a lot. But it's fine. Everything is fine. It's not fine. It's not fine. Actually, it's not fine. It's not fine. But this was a great time. 5-star. If you haven't read the Fourth Wing series, just start this. It's a good time. So 5-star. So the last book, physical book, book that I actually finished last month is Love in Other Words. And that is by Christina Lauren. This came as a highly, highly recommended book. I know a lot of people that said that this is basically their favorite contemporary romance book, like, of all time. In this story, we are following Macy and Elliot. This is a dual timeline, so you're getting when they were growing up together, and then you're also getting when they're adults. So the 2 of them met. Macy's father wound up buying them essentially like a weekend vacation home, which wound up being next door to Elliot's family's home. And that's how they met and started growing up together. I think they were middle schoolers when they met. Later on, they wound up having a huge, like, situation, which you'll learn in the book, where they didn't speak for, I want to say, like, 10 years. And then they run into each other by chance 10 years later. And this is them trying to rekindle a friendship 10 years after they had a massive falling out. I liked the book. I really liked both of the characters as a whole. I wound up rating this a 4-star. So I don't think that this lived up to the recommendations I got, and it didn't live up to the hype, in my opinion. I felt that sometimes Macy said what I viewed as kind of problematic things. And it's more of a personal thing where, like, just some of the, like, things that she said about, like, other, like, women characters, I just really just came off as, like, icky to me. So, like, that kind of just, like, threw me off from loving her character. Elliot I really liked Elliot, but there was something about his character, too, that I don't know, I felt like while I really enjoyed their characters, both of them just kind of had I don't know, there was just something. So I enjoyed it. It was a good time. I do recommend reading it because it is a really good story, but it did not live up to the hype, in my opinion. So 4-star, it was a good time. It was cute. I enjoyed it. There was a little twisty twist at the end where I was like, I am not okay. We'll be fine, but I am not okay in this moment. But yeah, so that is Love in Other Words, 4-star for me personally. That was the last book that I wound up finishing in January. Again, not as great of a reading month for me personally that I normally have, but I did read some good stuff. I had an enjoyable time, got through some of the things that I wanted to get through. Didn't get through as many books as I was hoping to, but that's life. It happens. So I hope that you enjoyed the content. I hope that if you enjoyed it, you decide to stick around and hit that subscribe button. Make sure to hit the bell notification. That will tell you when any new videos are posted. I typically try to post a video every Friday. That's at least my goal. I've hit it most of the time, I think. So, again, hope to see you in the next video. Happy reading. Hope that you read something great this week. Love you guys. Bye!